Okay, so good morning, Sharks. This is Gabe O'Neill, and we are at, I don't even know how many weeks of webinars this is, but I haven't been keeping track. But I really welcome Peter, and I'm going to try and say it, Biadasz, is that right?
It's actually
What's that?
Biavish. It's just what I remember. I had a coworker several years ago that insultingly said, "Don't be normal, be oddish," and it kind of stuck. Be oddish.
Okay, okay, Peter Biadasz. So that now at least I know how to say it. And from what I understand, you've written 19 books, yes?
I'm working on book 19 right now.
Okay, so which is phenomenal in and of itself. And so that and he's going to go through how to write your first book in a minute or so. In my just to give you guys a heads up where who I am, if you don't know, my name is Gabe O'Neill. I'm the godfather of the digital business card. And if you have not done this, you can text Gabe to the number 21,000 to get my card. Um, but really, and more importantly, what I want you to do is remember that's how you refer me out or any of our other digital card owners. We have one that I can tell in the group. If you can text George to 21,000, you get Mr. Grinley. So the idea is once you get the keyword to the 21,000, it's so easy for other people to refer you. The other day I was on a Zoom call that my calendar is open on my digital card, and this lady got on my calendar, and her name was Amanda. I said, Amanda, how do we know each other? She said, Gabe, we haven't met yet. I was in a national Zoom call the other day with a number of people on the Happy Neighborhood or whatever it was, and I saw these people having digital business cards. I said, "Where do you guys get these?" And she ended up in a breakout room, and she was literally asking for help on trying to find who created them. And a gentleman was there named Kendall, and I met him twice. I had a one-on-one with him about 6 months ago, and I saw him in a breakout room about within the last 3 or 4 weeks. And he doesn't have a digital card, but he told her to text Gabe to 21,000. Now she's a client, and she is also an affiliate. So that's really cool how that works. And part about digital accelerant is that we like to, regardless of whether you have a digital card, you can get benefit from all the different things that we offer as resources. And this is you're attending one of them. This is the knowledge accelerant portion of it. Referral accelerant portion is our networking groups, and I'll talk about that tomorrow, or I'll talk about that later as we have an event tomorrow. And the business accelerant is basically engagement pods for LinkedIn. So there's a lot of different resources that we offer, many of it for free, to help you guys increase your business. And if you text the word cards to 21,000, you will get access to everybody's digital card. You get to see how different they all are, how customized they all are. But I really want to promote the cross-pollination of everybody in that group, and that's working out very well right now. And our next event is tomorrow at 12:30 Eastern Time. Excuse me. Um, I encourage you to register at this location, the same place you registered for this. And the networking events have been really, really good. People have been getting a lot of business for it. And just to give you guys a heads up, since the digital cards bring in business, I thought maybe branding myself to bring in business in other ways might help too. So I'm expanding my services. I'm now offering LinkedIn lead generation. I've kind of cracked the code on how to do that. I'm doing it for myself, and it's working. But it's so if you want to learn more about that, certainly get on my calendar and we can talk about it. And the calendar is calendly.com/Gabe O'Neill. And that's basically, and again, I'd be more than happy to have a one-on-one with anybody just to chat, or to, if there's something I can help you with, or we can talk about LinkedIn or digital cards, whatever. Having said all that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Biadasz. There we go. And let you have at it, Peter. Welcome.
Welcome. Thank you very much. And you are recording, I see. Excellent. Okay, good. Because I'll be passing the recording on to some other people too. My name is Peter Biadasz. I am an author who owns a book publishing company. So let me tell you a little bit about my background before I really jump into the mechanics of writing books. Speaking is what got me into this whole mess. Way back when I was still living in Atlanta, I ended up joining a networking group. I was a banker for First Atlanta, which became Wachovia. One of my customers was Sharp Electronics Corporation, and they ended up stealing me away from the bank. Someone from one of my bank customers said, "Hey, would you like to join a networking group?" So I'm like, "Sure." What's a networking group? Didn't even know they existed. So I joined this group, high-powered professionals from Atlanta. I mean, it's just an amazing group of people. And they said basically 2 rules: just show up on time and pass a lot of leads, and you'll get along with us fine. So I showed up on time, passed a lot of leads. 3 months into it, they go, "It's time to elect a new president. Peter, you've been passing the most leads. We think you should be the next president." And I was like, I can barely spell networking at this point. Okay. So I had a week to figure out, why would someone come to a Peter Biadasz meeting? Well, my degree's in psychology. I clipped on my math and sciences, so I still do stuff in natural and social sciences. But in psychology, that's about relationships. Networking is about interpersonal relationships. So I figured I could come up with a curriculum to teach these people how to become better networkers. So I figured my premise of what I do is education. And so that decision I made that very first week, way back when, actually holds to today. That's why I'm doing this today, educating people on different things. Okay, so started teaching 5-minute snippets. Next thing I know, I'm working with groups around Atlanta. Moved to Tulsa after a divorce to be with the kids. My boss here had never been, he didn't like his networking group, so I joined that group. 3 months later, they said, "Hey, you're the new president because you're passing the most leads." Next thing I know, the chamber here calls me and says, "Hey, there's a lot of networking groups around. Would you like to hit up the networking groups? You know, have a president's council, that kind of fun stuff." We identified 42 networking groups in the Tulsa metro area. So I started emceeing their breakfast network. We had 300 people show up at a time. I used to play trumpet professionally, so I'd start the meetings with trumpet for something different. And next thing I know, I'm working on a national basis teaching networking. But the whole time, people would say, "Hey, this is really good information. Where's your book?" Well, because the way I was raised, okay, the first hurdle I had to overcome, I was born and raised in Massachusetts, went to a private Catholic school. I do pretty much everything. Oh, okay, there you go. So I pretty much do everything left-handed, okay? The nuns said everyone will write right-handed. So my right-handed penmanship makes doctors look like really, really, really neat. So the well-meaning adults in my life, rather than saying, "You have horrible penmanship," said, "Oh, you can't write. Oh my God, that's hard. You can't write. You can't write. You can't write." So you hear this for enough years, the mental talk up here is, "You can't write." Okay. So when people would say, "Where's your book?" I go, I can't write. Take good notes. Okay. So sometimes the first hurdle in overcoming to write your first book is overcoming all the input you've had your entire life. And so finally, I was like, plus the other thing too is speaking too. When you get your psych degree, you get a list of fears. You learn how to overcome lists of fears. Fear of public speaking is number 1. Fear of dying is like number 2 or number 3, which means people would rather die than speak in public. So my first 10 years of my speaking career, I get to the gig early, go to the bathroom, throw up, and go out to the speaking gig. It was great. I was doing a lot of running. I was playing team tennis in Atlanta and stuff. Kept me skinny. So there was some benefits to that. As you can tell now, I no longer throw up. So totally voluntary. So I was doing a speaking gig one time, and my maintaining a positive attitude speech. And in the audience, unbeknownst to me, was someone who owned a newspaper. And she said, "Boy, if you could take what you just said and put it in 800 words, I'll publish it for you." 800 of the most torturous words I've ever typed in my entire life. It was horrible because "you can't write, you can't write, you can't write" was screaming at me during the entire time. Well, she liked that article so much, we turned it into a series of articles. So I'm like, yay, never want to do that again. Until people kept on asking, "Where's your book?" So I'm trying to write the first book, called More Leads on Business Networking, took 14 years. So basically I had 13 and a half years of, oh my God, this is horrible. And then finally, one of my mentors said, "You know what? You have the content. Pretend when no one's home, go to your computer, give your 3-hour seminar as if the room is packed, and what comes out of your mouth, just type it out." The book was done 3 weeks later. Okay, I was like, and us authors, when you get to the end where you type out the end, we always like to do that. Even if it's not in the final draft, you just type it out I remember screaming out, "Thank you, Jesus, I never have to do this again." So got that first draft done, went to a meeting, a network meeting of all things. And this guy walks up to me and says, "Yeah, I know you're working on a book on business networking. I have a concept too. What do you think?" It was brilliant. So he said, "Great, can we co-author?" And I'm like, oh man. And so I'm thinking, yeah, you write 90%, I'm gonna write 10%. He was thinking 50-50. So we got that book out. And again, I think, thank God I never have to do that again. With the book signing for that book, had a line of people at this big bookstore. And someone in my network who's a former National Teacher of the Year shows up and says, I have an idea for a book. So we excuse ourselves from our book signing, talk about the concept. It was brilliant. He said, but the problem is I have this big national teacher conference in 6 weeks. Can we get this done in 6 weeks? We did, 300 pages, written, edited, designed, and published within 6 weeks. And we were at this big conference and we sold out books. So as a nonfiction writer, a lot of the books I write is because people ask me to, or there's a need there or something like that. So I know who my target audience is. But to even start that process, I had to become comfortable with the uncomfortable. One of my mentors always said, you need to make decisions early on. What are your goals and what do you want to do to become successful? And that's why the throwing up thing before speaking, I became comfortable with that, because to get to meet my goals, it's just a part of the process. It is what it is. People do things for one of two reasons: to gain pleasure or avoid pain. Okay, if you're gaining pleasure, you're getting stuff done. If there's pain involved, that's where you procrastinate. And I have another section on procrastination I won't cover today. But that's the problem with writing a book. They say 90% of people have an idea for a book, but only 2% do something with it. Well, that 88% is what keeps me busy. Now, in that 88%, you don't do things for one of two reasons. You don't know how, or you don't want to. So the folks who don't want to, they're not here today. You want to, that's why you're here today, okay? So on the throwing up thing, the public speaking thing, I made the mistake of speaking to a group one time that I knew really well. They knew me really well. And I get done with my speaking gig early. So there was time left for questions and answers. Now, I program everything to the minute, so there's no Q&A. Now, there'll be Q&A today, okay? But usually, back in the day, no Q&A because it was very safe for me. Made the mistake of Q&A. First question asked was, you seem so natural as a speaker. Tell us your secret, because I get nervous. Again, decision time. Do I get honest with them or do I lie? I thought I'd be honest. I said, well, if you came here like 15 minutes early, if you'd gone to the bathroom, you'd have heard something you didn't want to hear. Because that's just the way it rolls. Like, oh, you're lying, you're lying, you're lying. I'm like, okay, whatever. I said, well, here's my process. I do that, I come back. I usually wear a suit when I'm in public speaking gigs, not on Zoom. And I say, when they start introducing me, there's someone in the room that you don't know about, they're designated, okay? And what they're gonna do is a little ding, 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 ding against the cup, okay? You know Pavlov's dog? I'm the dog. I hear the cue and that calms me down, okay? And when they're introducing me, I button the coat, and when they say, and here's Peter Biadasz, when y'all are clapping, under my breath, I mutter, showtime. Showtime, hey, welcome to the meeting, blah, 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 okay? So I don't believe you. So I told the process. The next time they invited me a couple months later, I went through the process, except this time when I said showtime, everyone around me was like this. And they heard me, and they were like, oh my God, you're terrified. And I'm like, I told you. That became my therapy. Having a psych degree, I just guess I did some self-therapy there. The first step is acknowledging you have a problem. So I publicly acknowledged I had a problem. And ever since then, I really enjoy the speaking thing. So same thing with the book. Once I got with some authors and said, you know what, I really hate this. I really, really hate this. Now, it took me 5 books to kind of figure the industry out, because it's a very mature industry, for both the writing side and the publishing side. And I was around book 5 at that time. Book 6 was a lot of fun. So I jokingly say that my first book took 14 years. My book, Write Your First Book, which is book number 15, took 3 weeks, literally. So it's amazing. Once you get into the program and learn how to do this stuff, it's a whole lot easier. But a lot of it is just overcoming the stinking thinking that's up there. So that's really the first big thing, okay? So that's, as far as how I got the publishing company, just some background on that. Book 10 was getting ready to come out. I hated my publishing company. Now, once I did not like my publishing company. So I went into my network, because I'm a networker, and said, hey, can someone give me an introduction to a publisher? Someone introduced me to a publisher, actually a VP of a publishing conglomerate. I contacted him and said, you don't know me, I don't know you. If you go to Amazon.com, you see him for real, can you give me 20 minutes? 20 minutes turned into 3 months of discussions, at which the owner of the conglomerate showed up and said, look, we've checked you out, you've owned a phone company, you've done this, you've done that, you're gonna keep on writing. We are not set up for someone that writes a lot of books, maybe 3. Here's a stack of paper. Take this to your business manager. We think you should own your own publishing company. So I went to my business manager, and she was like, if you don't do this, I quit. This is stupid easy for you. And I'm like, she goes, okay, if you had a publishing company, what would you want the focus to be? I said, well, for us authors, from the time we have the idea to the writing process, ghostwriters if needed, illustrators, cover designers, typesetters, marketers. She goes, you want a total resource, total publishing. And see, for me, a networker is a total resource for anyone you come in contact with. So the total thing hangs in there. So we had the name of Total Publishing and Media and everything lined up within 20 seconds. She got with the lawyers, we got the papers. Now I'm holding papers that say I own Total Publishing and Media with 0 customers. I knew 2 people on my network that could not keep secrets for the life of them. So I went to them and said, shh, don't tell anybody, I have a publishing company. So we signed our first author the following week. We teach all the authors networking. So we've basically been around for 15 years, growing to be an international book publishing company with a 0 marketing budget. I make gain through networking. I'm sure that if y'all look at how you meet a lot of people in your network, it's through networking. So networking is the model I take, and so I get to meet y'all through networking today. So that's kind of my backstory of where I'm at. I'm an author that owns a book publishing company. So I'm an author first. So I always have the author-to-author discussion, then we have the publishing discussion. Now, on the author-to-author discussion, 2 things I always ask people about, and the first question is not what's your book about, it's tell me about you. What are your passions? What are your areas of expertise? Because what I've learned in writing all along is what you should be writing about, what your lane is the intersection of passion and expertise. That intersection is really what you should be writing about. A lot of times I'll be reading manuscripts submitted to us and it's like, okay, this is good, but this is not that person. And I'll say, why'd you write that? Well, so-and-so said I should write that. My boss said I should write that. Or it's for a project or this. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why to write something. And sometimes there's no right or wrong. But if a person understands what their lane is, I'm a nonfiction writer personally. Now, I have a children's book out there, an illustrated children's book. I'm also working on a fiction book just to expand my writing chops. But I know what my lane is. Like I was talking yesterday with an author up in Canada, a brilliant fiction writer. And I had a fiction idea. And I said, I'll be honest with you, I have no problem giving this idea because I ain't going to do anything with it. Or I'm not. I'm sorry, get too colloquial here. So I said, here, run with it. If you want to give me some credit somewhere, that's fine, but just run with it. He started writing before he even hung up. So know what your lane is. Know what your passions are. Know what your areas of expertise are, okay? When you finally have that idea, you run to your computer and open up a Microsoft Word document. You just label it book. Don't even need a title, because any title at this point is just a working title. A title is maybe a 1 to 5 word summarization of the entire book. But if a book's not written yet, it's hard to summarize what's not written yet. You can summarize the concept, that's what the working title is, okay? And as far as titles go, we'll talk more about final titles in a little bit. But and then you do a brain dump. Spend 90 days doing a brain dump. Anything and everything you can think about that subject, whether it be a word, a phrase, a sentence, a paragraph, a person, a link to another article or something, get all the information together, but do that brain dump for about 90 days or so. And usually what happens during the 90 days is you'll take some time away for it to come back with fresh eyes, which is an important part of the writing process anyway, so always come back with fresh eyes. You know, at the end of 90 days, or when you feel like you've really exhausted anything that's up here on the topic, then you start assembling all this massive amount of information you have. Things that are similar to each other, you start putting together, okay? And so you got like-minded subjects together and everything else, and then you've got to figure out the storyline, a beginning, a middle, and an end. Regardless of genre, there's always a beginning, middle, and end. Now, Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Successful People, habit number 1 is begin with the end in mind. So one thing I always tell authors, and I do this for myself too, because I write a lot of 1,000-word articles, is when the person gets done reading what you're writing, how do you want them to feel? Studies have shown if you tie feelings closer to things, you're more likely to hit the target. So how do you want people to feel? Do you want them to feel happy, sad, anxious? I mean, there's a long list of emotions. So if you know where you're heading to, it's like a roadmap. You know where your destination is, okay? If you just hop in the car and say, I want to go somewhere, well, you may not know where you end up and how long it took to get there. But if you know this is where I want to end up, this is the feeling I want to end, I'm starting here. There's a lot of stuff in between, but that's what I have the brain dump for. So I'm ending here, I'm starting here. Now the stuff in the middle is the brain dump. Eventually you want to organize it to know what your beginning, middle, and end is. And that brain dump turns into your outline. That outline becomes your table of contents. Now some books like nonfiction will have a table of contents. Fiction books usually don't have a table of contents, although some do. And this is Write Your First Book. This is the table of contents of Write Your First Book. Once you have the outline written, at that point, for me, a book is nothing more than a series of articles. So today I'm going to write on, and you don't have to write in order. So maybe today I want to write an article about this. Tomorrow I'm going to write an article about that. The next day, maybe something on this page. So once all the articles are done in your outline, the first draft of the book is done. Okay. Now here's some good news about the first draft. It will be horrible. That's the good news. Okay. Every first draft is horrible. I write every day. My first drafts are still horrible. They're a better horrible than they were 15 years ago, but they're still horrible. Now, a mistake a lot of first-time writers make or inexperienced writers make is you write something, then you fix it. You write, you fix, you write, you fix, you write, you fix. 3 weeks later, you're still in the first paragraph because you're doing writing fixing. Now, one side of the brain is the creative side of the brain. The other side of the brain is the logic side. So what happens when you're doing write, fix, you're going back and forth between your corpus callosum, can drive you insane. When you're in that creative mode, stay in that creative mode and just write that first draft. When the first draft is done, then you can start doing the fixing stuff, okay? So that's a very important thing. It'll speed up your process. And that was a problem I had for the first 13 and a half years of my first book, is I was doing write, fix, write, fix, write, fix. And you can tell by the way how choppy it was, because when I give a presentation, it flows. And that's why my mentor said, pretend to give me a presentation because it flows, okay? You want your book to flow as if you're speaking. One of the biggest compliments people always give me is, I read your book and I can hear your voice. For me, that's a compliment because a lot of my books are my speeches I turned in the books, or similarly something like that. Your writing voice, okay? You know how you listen to the radio and you hear someone sing and you know who that singer is? They have their singing voice, okay? It took them years to develop that singing voice. It's not just like your talking voice. Your writing voice is the same way. Developing your writing voice is very, very important. And this is where it's good to have beta readers, people that you know and trust that can read your work. Because what will happen a lot of times, especially in a longer work, you will actually, until you know what your writing voice is, you will actually switch voices. It's because of the voices in your head. Because you may have read something somewhere along the way or heard something somewhere along the way, and you want to emulate that. So you may switch from sounding like them to sounding like you, to sounding like someone else, to sounding like you. And that's why writing is a craft. The more you do it, the better you get at it. So your writing voice, like I said, it took me 5 books. And it's funny because I look back at some of my earlier works, especially some of my articles way back when, and I'm almost embarrassed sometimes knowing what I know now. But that's part of the growth process. And that's actually a good thing. And that's why this book's in its 2nd edition. So the brain dump's very important, working title, arranging things, knowing where you're heading to, and then actually doing the writing part. Okay, any questions so far? Because I know I'm flying along kind of fast. Okay. Once you have the manuscript as good as you can make it, again, take 2 weeks away, come back to it with fresh eyes, read it over and over and over and over. The best thing to do in reading what you're writing is to say it out loud. If you read it out loud, you'll hear it in a way you've never heard it before, because when you hear it up here, our brain tends to fix things, especially spelling and typographical errors. Our brain will fix stuff and you'll never see it. When you start reading stuff out loud, the errors pop out, which is kind of cool. But also you'll find that if you are stumbling over something while you're verbally saying it, that's probably a rewrite area. Sometimes it's just a part of a sentence where you go blah, 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 and then you stumble, blah, blah, blah. That stumble part, that's a rewrite area. Because if you're stumbling it when you're talking it out loud, people are going to stumble over it when they're reading it silently. And then heaven forbid someone actually reads your book at a book signing or some other event or something like that. So to do that several times. Now, when you finally have the book as good as you can make it, here's some grammar things you can do, okay? One, the word and, A-N-D. The word and, if you have more than one and in a sentence, unless it's dialogue, it's really 2 sentences. So after you've made it as good as you can make it, do an and run. You'll be amazed how many run-on sentences you find. Every genre has an average sentence length, okay? And it varies by genre. But if you are running into a sentence, I ran across this last week. This sentence was literally, in Microsoft Word, 12-point font was probably about 12 lines long. Yeah, there were a couple commas in it, but the sentence was at the end of the 12th line, okay? And this is a fiction genre. They were trying to describe a scene, and it was really probably about 8 sentences rolled into one, okay? A lot of ands, and this author knows better too, so I can't wait to get the feedback to find out what that person was thinking. Okay, the second thing, which is more important, is the word that, T-H-A-T. We use the word that all the time in speaking, but in writing, that, T-H-A-T, is a filler word. Here's the rule of that. 90% of the time you can take the word that out of a sentence, Replace it with nothing, it just tightens up the sentence, okay? 7% of the time, replace the word that with which, W-H-I-C-H, and occasionally who, if the noun is a person. 3% of the time, leave the word that in there, okay? So it's 90%, 7%, 3%. Now, I was doing one of my seminars down in Houston years ago, and I went through this and everything else. On the way back to the airport, an author who I know really well, who's very accomplished, texted me and said, I just ran home and took 300 that's out of my current manuscript. That is common to pull out that many that's. Now, when I'm writing, because I teach this, my first drafts don't have a lot of that's in them because I'm used to that now, but it takes a lot of practice to eliminate that while you're in the creative mode. So sometimes I just stick them in there for flow reasons, knowing I'll take them out later. But you'll be amazed how much those little things will tighten it up, because the goal of getting the manuscript as good as you can make it before it gets to an editor is, I always tell people, if on a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 is horrible and 10 is perfect and 10 doesn't exist, if your manuscript is, let's say, a 5, the editor can probably get up to maybe a 6.5, maybe 7. But if you give them an 8 or 8.5, they can get up to 9.5, 9.8 territory. So you want to make it as good as you can make it before you get it to an editor. And that's why the self things that we're talking about now are very good. But also, you want to make sure that you have some beta readers take a look at it too. Again, people you know, people you trust. Sometimes writers are good, sometimes non-writers are good, because a lot of times your target audience, let's talk about that real quick. When you're writing this letter, this is a letter you're writing to someone. Doesn't matter the genre, you're writing a letter to someone. This is not a to whom it may concern letter, okay? You need to know who your target audience is, okay? My target audience are busy business people, okay? So you're my target audience. Who's your target audience for what you're writing? Now, the reason, one of the things I learned about target audience that was very important for me as a writer was I was doing these Write Your First Book seminars before Write Your First Book was even conceived, okay? It was just how to write your first book. And so one time I was actually giving a seminar in a Barnes & Noble years ago, and someone said, hey, great information, why don't you give us a book on how to write a book? And I literally said, the world does not need another book on how to write a book. I can see the reference section from here, go forth and buy. Is literally what I said. Next day I'm meeting with a pastor, and he said, man, this is really good information. Where's your book on this stuff? And because it was a pastor, it was like the voice of God came out. Where's your book on this? So I actually ran to the Barnes & Noble I was at the night before, ran to the reference section and looked up the books on how to write books, and realized the books on how to write books were small print, very thick, academic, boring as all get out. Basically the reasons why I fell asleep in English class way back when, okay? And I realized my target audience doesn't have a book on how to write a book. Busy people. And so I designed the book so that you can read it on an airline flight, small sections, so you don't have to worry about back reading. The book says up front, here's the highlights of the writing, publishing, and marketing books. If you want deep, there's those boring books in the reference section. So, and it's been a big success because I knew my target audience, okay? So when you think about writing a letter to your target audience, you want to know them, where do they spend their money? That's kind of important, because you're not writing for a grade, you're writing to sell books. Where do they buy their coffee? Where do they buy their clothes? What do they do for entertainment? You know, what do they like? What don't they like? You know, you want to know your target audience so well that you can sit down with them at a Starbucks and have coffee with them and talk about this and that and the other, or know them so well to know that they don't want to go to Starbucks, okay? So this is not a to whom it may concern letter. So do some research on your target audience. I can't tell you how many authors that send something to me and I'll talk to them and say, you know, tell me about your target audience. And they go, oh, what's a target audience? I forget sometimes, having grown up in the world of sales and in psychology, that I know what a target audience is. Some people are in positions, in professions, that they don't know what a target audience is, believe it or not. So the thing to say is, let me educate you, okay? So the target audience thing is very, very important to know who you're writing that letter to, regardless of the size of the letter. Okay, let's talk about, and also from a marketing standpoint too, that's another thing too. When I'm writing stuff now, I didn't do this back in the day for the first few books as I was so busy on the writing process, but when you're writing something, when I write something, in the back of my head, I'm always asking this question: who'd want to read this? Who'd want to read this? Who'd want to read this sentence? Who'd want to read this paragraph? Who'd want to read this chapter? Who'd want to read this book? So I have a pen and paper next to my computer. So I'm writing down the list of the people, the organizations, the events that would want to read what I'm writing. So when I get done with my first draft, I have a list of target audience. So I've already started the marketing of the book or preparing for marketing the book or article before the work's even out there, okay? So that's kind of more of an advanced getting ready to market your project before it's even done by having that list already there. Because a lot of times with authors, I'll get together with them, and once we get to the point where it's time for marketing, then they start thinking really who the target audience really is, which means a rewrite on the manuscript, but then, get to know them so well that we start the marketing thing. To me, begin with the end in mind. The end game for books is selling books, usually. Sometimes it's just education. But if your end game is to sell books, beginning with the end in mind means begin with knowing your marketing on the front end. And that's the whole other educational seminar, basically, too. Chapter 8, chapter 8 bonus in the book. But, okay, let's talk about titles real quick. One of my mentors way back when I was probably in book 3 or 4 writing it, he said, go to a bookstore and walk up and down every single aisle of every single genre. And when you find a cover that you like, stop and take a look and ask yourself the question, why do I like this cover? And then when you find a cover you hate, stop and ask yourself, why do I hate this cover? It was the most amazing 3.5 hours I ever spent in the bookstore, because the cover art was interesting, but the titles and subtitles is what really grabbed me as a writer, okay? And what I learned is that fiction books, the titles are usually 1 to 3, maybe 4 words, no subtitle, the artwork is a subtitle. On nonfiction books, the titles are usually 1 to 5 words with a subtitle with attractive artwork. Okay, big difference between the genres. Now, getting into the psychology of how books are put together, the front cover gets people to pick up the book, the back cover gets them to open it, the table of contents or the stuff that's in the front and the back of the book gets people to buy the book. Okay, gets people to pick it up, gets people to open it, and the inside motivates people to buy it. Those are important things to understand, because what happens is when you get to the point where it's time for the cover design, I have a lot of people that think that they're artists or have relatives they think they're artists, and sometimes they are. And sometimes they're really good artists. But again, knowing who your target audience is very important to the artwork, because people in my industry, the graphic designers we have, they study what sells on covers. Okay, so the fact that you have a cool looking cover that is great, but if your target audience doesn't care less about that type of cover, it's for naught. You have a cool looking book that's maybe not going to sell a whole lot. But if you want to have books that sell, you want a cover that speaks to the target audience. And so getting back to the summarization of your book, the working title for Write Your First Book was like really long. In fact, the working title for most of my books are really, 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 really long, okay? Because I'm too all-encompassing. I'm in the creative mode. I've not done the editing yet, okay? Now, studies have shown that if you're doing a book signing and someone walks up to you and says, hey, what's your book about? You have 8 seconds to tell people what the book's about. 8 seconds before they decide they want to learn more, or you're going to take a breath, so they're going to run away, okay? Titles are the same thing, and we work with authors and giving you 8 seconds. Usually, I'll say, tell me in 60 seconds what's your book about. Tell me in 45, tell me in 30, tell me in 20, tell me in 15, tell me in 8. So it's kind of an exercise, okay? The title is the same thing. It's just a few word summarization of the entire book. There's a book we did for Dr. Malcolm Conway. He's a doctor, sports medicine doctor up in Pennsylvania. He works with professional athletes. He's the doctor, like if you're watching Wimbledon or US Open or professional sporting events, and they say that the athlete went to the doctor, it's usually Malcolm, especially on the East Coast. In fact, I thought I had this book back there. I know, okay. So actually, yes, I do. I know it's staring me in the face. Well, I guess not. Okay. So the title on his book, he realized that working with professional athletes, the problem was not the athletes, it was the parents. The parents would push their child and a lot of time take someone who had a lot of potential and maybe ruin them somewhere along the way. So the book was for parents called Raising Elite Athletes. The final title was Raising Elite Athletes. Going to press, that was not the title. It was a little bit longer, not quite as direct. And Malcolm and I were talking on the phone about a week and a half before it was going to press about the book and everything else. We're doing the marketing campaign, doing all kinds of cool stuff. And in the middle of the sentence, he said, blah, 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 Raising Elite Athletes, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, stop. What were those 3 words you said in the middle of the sentence? He said, Raising Elite Athletes. And together, we both screamed on the phone, that's the title. And so we had to stop everything we were doing and redo everything on the headings and everything else for Raising Elite Athletes. So just because you think you have your title and your summarization of the book, it's not over till it's over. It can always get better. That's probably the editing of titles if you want to go into that. So most people, again, they get hung up that says, well, yeah, I'm working on a book and I'm still working on the title. Well, tell me about the book. Well, I really haven't done anything with that, but man, I'm working on that title. I've spent a month working on the title. No, the title is the last thing that comes, okay? With most authors, especially first-timer or inexperienced authors, and I did the same thing. We tend to write things backwards or do things backwards, okay? Can't tell you how many times I'll get to usually the first paragraph of a manuscript, beautifully written. You can tell they went through the process, but if you look at the first half and second half of the paragraph, if you just flip-flop them, it then becomes a perfect paragraph. Authors tend to build up to stuff. We try to build up to things. So in that first paragraph, they say, I'm going to build up to the second half rather than grab them on the front end. So sometimes if you just invert it, it's like, oh my God, there's a perfect paragraph, okay? Studies have shown that most books do not get read beyond page 18. Think about that. Most books universally do not get read beyond page 18. I can't tell you how many, again, authors will say, I'm trying to build up to something. Well, building up to something, it means absolutely nothing if the reader never gets there. So you basically have, the studies say 18 pages. I think maybe 8 to 10 pages before the author's going to go, you know what? No. If you read, I wrote a series of short stories that's actually going to be in the back of my 19th book. And in each of the short stories, I try to make sure that within the first 3 sentences, there's a gotcha moment. That's just my writing style based on a lot of study. That I know if I got you before you're out of that first paragraph, I'm going to have you for the rest of the work. Okay. Way back when I lived in Atlanta, I worked at a bank and I was held hostage at that time. It was at that time the largest bank robbery in the history of Georgia. So I'm writing a book about that. And, the gotcha thing is obviously at the end of what happened. But the very first couple of sentences, I've had people read the first draft and they were like, oh my God, I've got to read this book because even after the first paragraph, I need to know what happens at the end. And that's what you want to do is build that anticipation. Now, there's a lot of techniques to writing, which we won't get into today, but that brings me to my next topic, study. Anything that and actually, there's some good news too. The good news is anything you come up with an idea for, there's already something out there. And you can think about molecular biophysics, or you can think about anything you want to think about, there's already something out there. The difference is, what do you bring to the topic, okay? What do you bring to the topic? Because that's what the unique part of the topic is. Like I said before, there are a gazillion books on how to write a book. And I really truly believe the world didn't need to know the book on how to write a book. But I found there was a need, there was a niche. So what's your need, what's your niche? That goes into study. Anything that you are writing on, regardless of genre, study, study, study. Know it's out there because what can happen is over time, we take a lot of knowledge in. And sometimes we may not remember that we heard something somewhere from a long time ago. And the worst thing that happened is you write something that you think is yours, and realize you heard about it 30 years ago. And you could be setting yourself up for a lawsuit. Hate to bring those up, but that's why research is really good. And that's why beta readers are really good. Early on in the company, this fiction writer came to me. Guy was totally brilliant, knew the craft really, really well, presented the manuscript to me, and we got done talking about it. I said, this is really, really good. I have one question for you. Does this in any way sound like Star Wars to you? And he was like, oh man. It did not mean to deflate him, but I said, now here's your challenge. I mean, you're good at the craft, but you have this storyline embedded in you so deeply that you don't even see it in your own work. So now it's time to do more research to come up with what's yours. Now, if you study storylines, this goes back to Shakespeare, and there's a lot of information on this. There are basically 3 or 4 basic storylines. Every movie, every book, everything you read comes back to 3 or 4 storylines. Just think of Romeo and Juliet. How many times have you seen Romeo and Juliet over and over and over? West Side Story. I mean, the list goes on and on and on from that storyline. And that's why Shakespeare was Shakespeare, because he had mastered the 4 storylines into his plays. If you're writing fiction, know what the 4 storylines are and understand how they work and how they don't work. The bad thing for me is when I go see a movie, usually within the first 5 minutes, I know what the storyline is, so I kind of know how it's going to end ahead of time. But I try to convince myself I don't. I watch movies with my business manager sometimes, and she is horrible because she understands this concept really well. And she will tell me, usually within the first 10 minutes, who's going to die, who's going to live, how it's going to end. And her accuracy rate is like 99.9%. So I try to not watch movies with her because it's just no fun. You know, there's got to be some mystery to the whole thing. So, but understanding these concepts of what you're getting into, it's not just I'm going to sit down, I'm going to write. There's a lot of back end work that goes into the whole thing. Okay. Now, as far as writing goes, in fact, if you email me or email Gabe, I've got these two articles. One is utilize your book as an atomic business card. If you're a nonfiction writer and you want to use your book to accentuate your business, I can send you an article for free. Also, 10 ways to keep your writing juices flowing. If you want me to email that to you, I can do that also. But one thing that's in the 10 ways to keep your writing juices flowing article is know when you are most productive as far as writing goes. Know where is your most productive writing area, okay? And know when that creative moment hits, okay? I'm from the music industry originally, so I'm a night person. Okay, the best recording sessions I ever did were like 3 to 5 o'clock in the morning. So I know I'm a night writing person, which is great for the writing part of me. Owning a business that has authors all over the globe, it makes it interesting from a time zone standpoint. So I've had to do some juggling, but I know that if I'm going to write, usually when most people are going to bed, that's when I'm in front of the computer, I'm just banging it out because I just know that's my time. Occasionally, if I'm under deadline for an article, I can get creative during the day because I've trained myself to do that. But again, writing is a craft, you just kind of learn how to do it. Know where is creative for you too. It might be a part of your house, might be a part of the office. It might be someplace that's away from all that stuff. You know, it might be another part of the town. It might be a park. It might, you know, there's so many locations. It might be a bookstore. You know, there's some people that the only place they can write is in the coffee shop area of a Barnes & Noble. That's fine. As long as you know what your place is, that's the way to do it. Now, just as a side note, I like to have fun with what I do. As you can tell, let's have some fun with the whole thing. One time I was back in the day, a Borders bookstore, when we had Borders bookstores. We did a lot of stuff with them. So one evening I'm writing in the Borders bookstore back in the coffee shop area, the crowded as I'll get out. And they announced, you know, when your drink was ready, they would announce over the intercom, you know, so-and-so, your drink's ready. So the girl that worked there knew me pretty well because I was a regular. And so she said, you know, she wrote Peter on the cup. I said, no, let's have some fun on this thing. Seeing you announce it. Place is kind of boring tonight. Brad Pitt. I'm Brad Pitt. So I want to sit in the far end. So I can see her working on my drink. She gets on the speaker. Brad, your drink's ready. Brad Pitt, your drink is ready. Place went completely silent. Everyone's looking around. Oh my God, oh my God, oh God. So Brad Pitt, your drink's ready. Finally, I stood up to get the drink and the whole place went, oh, kind of total disappointment. That's okay. The point is, have fun with what you're doing, okay? Sometimes you can get writing and just be so serious with the whole thing, it doesn't become fun anymore. That comes through in your writing. When I read my drafts, I can tell the points where I'm happy, having a good time and flowing really nicely, or I'm bored, I'm tired. Pace yourself and know what your pace is. My pace is, in writing, 40 minutes on, 20 minutes off. I could spend 40 minutes on the computer and just, sprinting. But I could tell when I hit minute 42. I mean, I could just feel myself wilt. At that point, I go hands off, walk away. I'll go do whatever else. If I'm home, I put on ESPN, because what is not rather non-creative than ESPN? Okay, mindless entertainment, which is fine because then I come back to the computer 20 minutes later and bang, we're just back there again too. So know what your writing style is as far as your practices and everything go. It takes practice. It takes time. That's just all part of finding your writing voice, because when all these components are working together, then you're kind of flowing along the way you need to flow along.
Hey, Peter,
Yeah.
I want to be mindful of the time here, and I want to give people chances to ask questions. Also, would you please put your information in the chat so that they can contact you?
Okay.
I mean, I just listening to you, I know you could go on for another hour or 2 hours, and I know you haven't even covered a lot of it. I mean, it's really I have so many questions. So I'll start with the questions. Um, as far as I can tell, bookstores don't even exist anymore. Is this pretty much true, or what? I mean, how do you in this day and age? How do you if I were to write a book, how the heck am I going to get anybody to buy it?
Okay, that's a great question. Let me put my contact information in the chat first, so that because I can't do 9 things at the same time. There we go, and we hit enter. Boom, there you go. Okay, studies have shown. I always go back to studies because people our industry has a lot of great case studies, and they're actually good, solid information. About 72% before COVID, okay, before COVID, 72% of all books bought were bought online, the online bookstores, okay? So it's a higher right now, but I was actually at a conference for publishers a couple of weeks ago, and while that 72% went high during COVID time, it will come back down to normal somewhere along the way. So as an author, I know that the Amazon.coms of the world are more important than the brick and mortar bookstores. However, the brick and mortar bookstores are the places to do those book signings. And those book signings are important because when someone walks in the bookstore today, they may not want to buy your book right now, but when they walk in at the holiday time or for so-and-so's birthday or graduation, when they walk in the store, they'll remember, oh, so-and-so was sitting at the corner there. Now, what was that book? I want to go buy that book. Bookstores hold maybe 3,000 to 5,000 titles. Online bookstores can hold up to 10 million titles, okay? So you want to make sure and of course, publishers like us, we make sure you get worldwide distribution, so your publisher takes care of distribution. But understand the online model, focusing how your customer, how your target audience buys their stuff online, and making sure that you are there both with the product and marketing. Now, as a side note, I'm going to interrupt you. Ebook versus paperback versus hardback, okay? Depending upon genre, we're in the information business. There's three modes of getting information out. If you're in the fiction realm, you can probably sell more ebooks and paperback books. But when ebooks was a shining toy, their sales went through the roof, but it kind of came back down to normal. Ebook and paperback are kind of neck and neck as far as total sales. Hardcover is a little bit lower. So just understand those modes there.
Yeah, and also it looks like you didn't send it to everybody, your contact, because I don't see it.
It's in the chat. I put it in the chat.
I don't see it. Did you send it to everyone?
Oh, you're right. I sent it privately. Hey, Jeff, you got my information. No one else does. Sorry about that.
That's okay. And what I'll do in the recording is I'll copy whatever that is, and I'll just kind of overlay it for the recording. Hopefully I'll remember to do that so that other people can get it as well.
Okay. Very good.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else have any questions for Peter?
Okay, I'll bring up another point so we don't have any questions. Because we have a couple minutes, right?
Yeah, till about 12. Mm-hmm.
Okay, one more point. Okay, what happens a lot is people come to me with unrealistic expectations. My book is a New York Times bestseller, and I'm going to be on Oprah next week. I'm glad you feel that way. Let's keep that enthusiasm going. Now let's talk reality. Okay, Oprah has 35 producers. What are the names of her book producers? I don't know. Okay, you just want to do some homework there. Okay, how does your book qualify for the Oprah Book Club? I don't know. Okay, so you're setting expectations based on I don't know. Okay, how do you get a New York Times bestseller list? I don't know. So research is very important. Here's reality. Studies have shown that on average it takes 18 to 36 months for a book to start to gain traction. Overnight successes in this industry happen, but they are literally 1% of 1% of all the books. Okay, so understand that. The biggest selling series in our industry, the Chicken Soup guys, about 130 million books, yay for them. The first book in years 1 through 8, that's 1 through 8, didn't really do a whole lot. In year 8 and 9, and going into year 10, the two authors decided they will each do 2 radio interviews per author per day. Okay, at the end of that time, they became an overnight success in year 10. Okay, so to understand that, the other thing I get to is I'm going to make my books to be made into a movie. To which I go, yeah, that's fantastic. That's great. What's the process? What are the case study shows and how long does that take? Books to movies can take anywhere from a couple of years if there's a pre-arrangement up to literally the studios will wait till after the author dies because it's a whole lot easier to negotiate with the estate. So understanding these ins and outs of the whole thing, we want people to walk in with realistic expectations. And sometimes the goal is not to sell books, believe it or not. When I wrote Write Your First Book, I didn't write that to sell a lot of books. I wrote that to educate people, to get the basics out of the way so we can have a more advanced discussion. At a book signing is when one of my authors said, hey, that book's like an atomic business card, at which time I wrote the article about, because his book doesn't sell a lot. His book was this, well, yeah, everything's backwards on the screen here. Okay, that book right there, that book right there, that coffee table book, that book has not sold a lot of books, but this guy has made 7 figures on this book. And the reason is he builds and restores cars. He's one of the few in the country that I believe can make the Eleanor books or Eleanor cars and stuff. So when people do business with him, they're writing him 6-figure checks. He gladly gives them a book in exchange for a 6-figure check. It's a credibility piece. It's made him a lot of money, but not sold a lot of books. Likewise, there's people that sold a lot of books, make a lot of money. So you have to know why you're getting into the industry. That's one thing we talk about in the front end. So the expectations are realistic and educated and fun that way too.
You have a couple questions in the chat.
Okay, let's see here. Get my chat reading glasses on. Okay. Average length of my books. Okay, this is one industry where I say size doesn't matter. Content is more important than size, okay? My books range from, I think the smallest one's 120, the largest one's close to 400, depending upon the topic. But the chicken, like, Who Moved My Cheese is out there. That's a skinny book, so I sold a lot of books. The biggest selling book of all time is this big, thick book called the Bible. So, I mean, you've got, content is more important than the size, okay? Do you use Evernote or similar tools? There's a wide variety of tools I use. And every tool, it varies from genre to genre. We could spend a whole seminar on tools. That's why I jokingly say that Google is my best friend, because for me, anything I do starts with Google. I've become like a research expert over the years. People actually call me to find people, is how prolific I am in researching at this point. I always start with Google and kind of go from there, but there are a lot of research tools. And if you research tools, you'll see a lot of cool tools out there. So, what is the book you're currently trying to promote? What has been your #1 seller? Okay. I don't know if you're talking about for me or the company, Jeff. Are you talking about me? Me? I'm sorry. Me? Okay. Well, I guess the book, there's 2 books for me. Well, actually, 3 books I'm constantly promoting for me. Write Your First Book, the book More Leads, which is Basics of Business Networking. And I wrote a book on prayer called Total Prayer, Talking to God is Easy. Those are the three different but similar target audiences. But those are probably the 3 I promote the most for me. What has been your #1 seller? It depends how you define #1 seller. Write Your First Book has sold a decent amount, but it's brought a lot of business into total publishing and media. My book on prayer, thank God, no pun intended, has sold a lot of books. More Leads has given me a lot of speaking gigs. So all 3 have been #1, but for 3 different reasons, because I wrote the books for 3 different reasons. Very rarely do I write a book to sell a lot of books. Now, some of my authors write books to sell a lot of books, and for that we market accordingly. But usually there's a method behind the madness on everything. So
I definitely want to talk to you, Peter, because as a matter of fact, a referral with regard to the book on prayer that you published. So I have someone that would be really good for you. Okay.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah.
Okay, your book on Amazon, your question on Amazon.
Yeah.
I love that question. Okay, and I love the way you ended it because you know the punchline. Okay, I'm going to tell you right now how you can become an Amazon bestseller for free. Okay, people charge a lot of money to make you an Amazon bestseller. The good thing about being an author that owns a publishing company is I'm behind the curtain. I'm playing both sides. I know what the real costs are on the publishing side, and that's why when we price stuff, we're usually more competitively priced than anybody else, because I know the real costs. You don't want to rip people off. But the people that say, pay me to become an Amazon bestseller, I say, here it is for free. Okay, your rankings on Amazon are nothing more than the movement of your book, the sale of your book as it relates to the books around you, okay? So what you do as a publisher, when we put a book into the world, we can usually choose 3 categories. So we choose the most important category for the target audience, then we choose another realistic category, and then we'll find a category where there's probably not a lot of traffic in, okay?
Right, correct.
And then we say, okay, get all your friends and family and everybody you know to say, please buy my book, not on a Saturday, maybe a Thursday night from 1 o'clock in the morning to 2 o'clock in the morning. So you'll have a lot of movement on your book and maybe no movement on these other books. And you go to your computer and go to Amazon.com and do save, and just do screenshots. Eventually, in one of those categories, you'll become #1. If it's just for 15 seconds, you get the screenshot that says, hey, I'm a #1 Amazon best-selling author. You get that for the rest of your life.
Yeah, if the reason I asked that, I am an Amazon #1 bestseller. I refuse to use it, okay? You won't find that in my identity anywhere because I think it's disingenuous, and that's why I asked that question.
and I respect you for that. Now, if you did it the ethical way, and some people do, I'm sure you did. There are ways of marketing that you did it the right way. It's a slippery slope to go sometime, and it's maybe not part of your public marketing, but you can in groups or in smaller settings say, look, I know that this can be done by manipulating this, or, know the system, play the system, basically. But you could say, I did this the right way, and take pride in that, because if you did it the right way, yeah, I mean that's yeah, yay, totally respect that. Same thing with New York Times bestseller list. It's amazing how a book that has brand new release that hasn't sold any books shows up on the New York Times bestseller list. Okay, isn't that kind of weird? So, and authors that want to be on lists, I say, you can be on a list and literally sell 0 books. Tell me what your criteria is. And if it's one of those type of authors, just wants the kudos and everything, maybe we don't want to do something with you. We want people that are really serious about the craft, serious about what they want to do, rather than have a participation trophy. Now, years ago, there's an author that came out of nowhere that truly did everything but came out of nowhere. And we were like, wow, how'd that happen? Because it's so rare. So I went to one of my operations folks and said, do some research, because we like case studies. But at the end of the day, he came to me and said, I figured out what they did. And they really did this. They had a marketing budget of $750,000. They identified their target audience. They printed 1.2 million books. And they spent their $750,000 wisely, but they also had to pay for the 1.2 million books up front. So their total investment was a 7-figure investment to become a legitimate best-selling author. So I always tell people that if you come to me, it will write me 8 figures. That was 8 figures because of the inventory. If you will write me an 8-figure check, I will make you a best-selling author.
Okay. Well, Peter, this has been awesome. I think we're going to respect everybody's time and close it out. That's a good place to close it. Very, very good. And I encourage everybody to engage with Peter. I haven't known him very long, but I think you all know that I think you all are big fans of him as I am at this point. And thanks for spending that time. Thanks for all that wonderful information. And we will be checking out your books. Did you put a link to your books in the chat at all, or just
Well, the books are available at Amazon.com or wherever you buy your books.
So if I find, is there a list of just your books where I could go like?
Well, actually, the easiest thing to do, if you Google me, my body of work can come up. If you go to Amazon or any bookstore, online bookstore, and just put my name in, my body of work will.
Okay, good, very good. I'll see if I can do that and screenshot it for people too.